So please join me in a massive round of applause welcoming Will Butler-Adams.
Thank you very much, everybody. You don't need to cheer me, unless you want to. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our business. And thank you very much for turning up and sort of turning down our very short-lived summer. So that's the bike that I've taken out of our reception, which has got a dodgy light on it, which doesn't seem to want to turn off. This is one that we've made, which we just need to get some of you guys away from your computers and obsessed with your little tablets on a fucking bicycle. So in the interests of the importance of branding, we made one to show you. But basically we make a bike. We make a bike that makes life in cities a little bit more enjoyable. It doesn't mean that your children are well behaved. It doesn't mean that your boyfriend or girlfriend is fit. It doesn't mean that you look like you're worth it on an advertising campaign. None of that. It just makes life a little bit better. We've been making them in London since 1980, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the journey that the company's been on from when Andrew, the inventor, started through to where we are today and some of the plans we have to try and grow our little business. So it started because of Andrew, who's looking pretty knackered in that photograph. And that was in about 1982, I suspect. He went to Cambridge, studied engineering, and was far too intelligent to work for anybody else. If you've met hyper-intelligent people, they find it extremely difficult to work for anyone else because they know they're just so much cleverer than the person they're supposed to be working for. So he was never going to work for somebody else. He was always going to work for himself. That started off with an entrepreneurial, cutting-edge flower business, which he got his friends to invest on in early sort of crowdsource funding. They shoved their money in. He got a little van, and he did these sort of hanging baskets in Burlington Arcade and other places around London. And he had winch mechanisms and gear mechanisms and automated watering systems, and within 2 years the business went bust. So his first adventure into the entrepreneurial world of, I'm going to make it, went a bit pear-shaped. Things carried on, and he sort of did a bit of contract work, but didn't really find his feet. And his dad at this stage is starting to worry. His friends are off on this is in the 70s, off on their graduate trainee programs, and they're all become, captains of industry, and he's still fiddling around wondering what he's going to do. And his dad had been in touch with a business called Bickerton. Ever heard of Bickerton? Very, very cool bike. And the strapline was Bag of Bickerton. It was a folding bike. Son I know quite well today. Really cool design, but rode like a blancmange, made out of aluminium with wiggly handlebars and rode a bit weird. Anyway, Andrew's dad, who was an accountant, knew that they were looking for some support, so encouraged Andrew to go along and meet them because he thought he might have a role with them, which he did. He went there, and then came back, and his dad's like, so how did it go? Maybe a job, maybe a 9-to-5 normal job. Was it exciting? And Andrew's like, yes, this was awesome. It was so interesting, but they've got it all wrong, and I've got a much better idea. And his dad's like, oh my God, here we go again, another bloody disaster. So Andrew set off coming up with his design for a better folding bike. And he, at the time, rented a flat on the Cromwell Road, which he rented when he left Cambridge. He still rents at 67, the same flat, just on the Cromwell Road, and he designed his bike. And he's pretty modest, hyper intelligent, and decided to call it the Brompton because his flat overlooks the Brompton Oratory, which is a Catholic church just down from the V&A. And he had a brilliant idea, and the idea was principally that the bike folded around the rear wheel and you encapsulated all the grubby bits in the middle. That was the basic idea. And he never wanted to make it, he wanted somebody else to make it. He just came up with a brilliant idea. He knew he was brilliant, he knew it was brilliant, it was all brilliant, except that nobody else thought it was brilliant. So when he wrote letters to Raleigh, who were making 1 million bikes a year at the time, they turned him down. Everyone else he went to, they turned him down. And after 5 years of turn downs for someone else to make it, he thought he'd better make it himself, which is what he's doing here with a guy called Paddy. And in 2 years, they made 400 bikes. And they sold them all. And after 2 years, Andrew got round to worrying about the actual P&L and discovered he'd made no money because his tooling didn't exist. He was fiddling around filing bits of plastic, but the bikes worked. The customers liked the bikes, and he knew if he could just get a bit of money to pay for tooling, so he could buy an injection mold tool rather than have to file and mill plastic, then he could sell it for the same price and make a profit. He needed 40 grand in 1982, which isn't actually a huge amount of money. So he went to Barclays Bank, he went to NatWest Bank, he went to all the VCs, he went to the government, help you get your business going. All of them turned him down. And finally, 6 years after he'd stopped production in 82, it was one of his customers that was so frustrated they couldn't buy more of these bikes that he stepped in, a chap called Julian Verica. And if you're into your music, there's a fantastic British maker of audio called Name Audio, and Julian founded Name. And he put the money in and got Andrew going. So it took Andrew 13 years to get this business off the ground. And to be perfectly honest, you have to be slightly barking to be so obsessed by a product that for 13 years, when everybody else tells you it's not going to work, you still go at it. And that's not 13 years to the point where he's now a great success. That's 13 years just to get the flipping thing started. And there was plenty of years after that where it was nip and tuck. We make the bike in London, and make means make. Often people think make means remove from box with made in China, take out of box, turn little screw, stick on Union Jack, made in UK. So we take metal, we bend it, form it, crop it, braze it, make the frame parts and make it in London. Andrew is extraordinarily determined, and the whole business is based upon the product. In the early days, he found customers a complete pain in the arse. He was obsessed with the bike. There were things that were wrong with it, and he had all these annoying customers trying to get more of his bikes. And he hadn't finished perfecting the bike, so they were just distracting him and annoying him, and they bugged him. And then he had annoying customers from Holland wanting to fiddle around with his bike, and he would have to spend more time translating a brochure, but that was a waste of time because he's getting in trouble with his indicator chain and was perfecting his chain tensioner. And the business only got off the ground because it was one of his customers who was so frustrated that they sorted him out with the dosh. So, not listening to what people say is one thing we believe strongly in. 2, all you need to really care about is your customer. And that is so overused and so rarely implemented. I started by saying this will not mean you have a fit boyfriend or girlfriend, nor will it mean you look like some poster that isn't even real, because most of what we see is bullshit. It's overrated, over-told, over-promised untruths. And yet we all march around buying into this stuff and then discover that half the stuff we bought is total trash. We wonder why we even bought it. If we do buy it, we wonder, was it worth it? Did it deliver what it said it was going to deliver? So it's simple. We just deliver a bike that makes life just a little bit better. And if we can deliver that, and deliver it not for the first 6 months when you've just had the elixir of spending £1,000 on a bicycle and you flipping love it, if after 6 years you genuinely think it's added some value, then we've achieved something, because few products do that. Again, the bike hasn't really changed. The design hasn't really changed. But the bike is changing all the time. The bike industry is funny. If you take, in fact, we'll come on to that a bit, but I'll save that for later. But the design hasn't changed, but the bike's changing all the time. So I reckon I've been there 14 years, with the exception of one part, which has been a dogged us, and no one's wanted it. It's been like a hot potato, which has finally been fixed. Pretty much every part's probably changed 2 or 3 times over that period. You can't see it, but they've changed. And also, our jigs and fixtures have changed, because in the early days, we were using, feeler gauges, verniers. Now we're using CMM machines. So our glasses have got rather more, binocular, and we can see more. We couldn't see before. And also, FEA didn't exist. We couldn't afford the computers. Now we can see it. So all the bicycle is doing is trying to get as close to nature. That's what physics is. Physics is just Mother Nature. And you try and get as close as you can and make it as light as possible, as stiff as possible, as compact as possible, and occasionally it tells you, zit, you can't do that. But the more you understand about nature, and FEA, finite element analysis, and some of the tools that we have today that we didn't have before have allowed us to get closer. And that has allowed us, funnily enough, to make the bike stronger and more efficient. We haven't made it that much lighter in the last 2 or 3 years. In the last 10 years, we've made it a lot lighter. But more recently, we're finding our customers are more like you guys. And actually, you're a real pain. We like customers who are, we don't mind customers who are quite heavy, but don't do many miles. Because, you can get that in America. You get someone who's quite large and they look at you and go, is it going to be all right? And I'm like, it's fine, no trouble at all. As you get thinner, you will do more. It's a sort of self-regulating prophecy. But the problem is with when you find a sort of 28-year-old rugger bugger who rocks up and he weighs 17 stone and does 10 miles each way and bounces off every curb. And those guys are an absolute nightmare because they try and break our bike. And we become more trendy. And so suddenly we've had to make the whole thing quite a lot stronger. But you don't know that, but we've been worrying about that quite a bit. I'm slightly obsessed with this thing about how you communicate, who you are, what you are. And my perception is, you can tell I'm not care too much about fashion. That's not where I'm spending my time. But Andrew is really, he doesn't realise the extent to which he is embedded in our business, but he is. And he thinks we're all useless and everything we're doing is crap because he's a perfectionist and he knows better than everyone else and we're all pretty useless. But he was obsessed by the product and allowed the product to do the talking. And the product, a brand, is not a logo. It's not something you pay an agency for that spend millions of pounds fiddling around and coming up with. A brand isn't even what you sell. A brand is an experience that you have over a period of time. It is something that is built up over trust and over genuine value that you add. So we have been lucky. That's all we've cared about. We don't spend our money on marketing. I don't think we're one of the biggest Google customers for AdWords or other words or other bits or other things, and I'm lost already. Because if I spent, like a Gillette razor, you're not buying a flipping Gillette razor. The razor cost is this much. Most of it's going on crap. Some tennis player or some other thing. You're not getting what you paid for. You're being ripped off. I don't mind spending some of my profit on R&D because I feel that my customers will think, well, you're making it better for the next generation. But to spend it on naff billboards and sort of overrated stuff is a bit not my bag. But we have been lucky, and you are, in some respects, part of that. Andrew's philosophy was always word of mouth. And the thing that is luck is that we've hit word of mouth at a time where word of mouth has changed, has moved from word of mouth to being global blogs. The word of mouth has been augmented by the internet. And honesty and integrity is what people look for, and the internet has given that, and your reach through that word of mouth has become global. And so we're very lucky at a time when we were relying on physical word of mouth, that at the same time, and to be fair, it was just when I happened to arrive, so it looks like I've done an amazing job, but actually I've just turned up at the right time. And that has allowed that word of mouth to become more widespread. And as a result, we've become quite international. We now export 80% of our bikes. We're making about between 45 and 50,000 bikes a year. We've made about 500,000 bikes to date. We're exporting about 80% to 44 countries around the world. But we haven't gone out there and started wandering around waving our flag saying, who wants to sell our bike? People have come to us and said, I've got a friend in London, was in London for 2 years, bought one of these cool bikes. He's taken it back to wherever he's gone, shown it to his friends. They got a few more. Can I become the distributor? And that's how we've started to sell and increasingly sell abroad. And in the early days, I remember I went to Taiwan, and which is ironic really, because most of the bikes that people buy in the UK are made in Taiwan. It's quite nice to sell them the other way. But I was in Taiwan, and I was with a guy, sadly, Sturmey Archer, who make hubs. They got screwed over in the UK, and then they were basically bought out of receivership and went to Taiwan, and we helped that business come back to life in Taiwan. So our hubs come from Taiwan. But so I was with one of our suppliers in Taiwan looking for a distributor. So there's one guy who was an architecture student, obsessed with bikes, never done selling, never done distribution, had a cool shop. He was a one-man band. So I met him. He loved the Brompton, wanted to become a distributor, thought it was cool. Then we went to dinner with this other guy who was some massive great distributor, whole load of people. We all got absolutely lashed on whiskey, which seemed to be par for the course. He showed us around his massive warehouse. We were all going to be millionaires. And we finished, and I was sitting down with Pierce, and I said, now, Pierce, which one do you think we're going to go with as a distributor? He said, well, it's obvious. You know, you've got this big, massive company. Yeah, but they don't give a shit. They don't care about us. They just see us as the latest fad. So instead we went with Thomas, who didn't know the first thing about anything to do with distribution, but cared deeply about our product. Thomas has grown our distribution in Taiwan. We've now set up a partnership with him in China. He's a complete legend. He's now had 3 children. He's a bit of a panicker, but he cares about our business. And in the long run, that is what your brand is about. It's not just about, it's everything. It's just honesty. So anyway, so the business has got bigger, and we're making a bit more money. I mean, compared to you guys, really tiddly. But we have a simple aim, which is just to make living in cities a little bit better. That's what we want to do. There are about 90,000 Bromptons in London, and we have had an effect on London. We have changed London, only a little bit, but it has had a real effect on the city, and that's something to be very proud of. If we're going to do what we need to do, and we've got all these ideas, and we don't want to go to the bank, and we don't want to go to VC, so we want to self-fund it, then we need to make a profit. And that's nothing to be embarrassed about. We need to make a profit to invest in new ideas and enable the business to be better. And so, you know, it's growing, getting there, and I'll talk a little bit later about where we are at the moment, because we were doing brilliantly and we were sitting back and making money, and then we just kicked all that into the long grass. But we'll come on to that. I was going to say our Prime Minister, but I haven't got Theresa May yet, so we'll have to just do this bloke. It's really weird. People get quite uppity about politics, but I'm quite into politics because I've met quite a few politicians. Don't care who they are, just care who's in power, who makes change, who affects the lives that we live in. And the problem with politicians is I knew who they were when I was at university. And basically, they were bloody boring. They were in the debating society. I was getting lashed or doing some engineering. You know, they had it written all over them when I was at university. They've not done work. They've been perfecting their sort of not answering a question and doing other funny political stuff. They're all professional politicians. The intent is solid. I haven't met a politician who doesn't care, but their knowledge, their experience, their understanding of the real world that we're in is pretty much piddly and small. So, therefore, we have to engage with them because they don't have a clue. We have to tell them what's what in our own little industry, because if we don't tell them, they won't know. So, and really in my industry, the problem is infrastructure. The thing works. We only have to look in Copenhagen or Amsterdam, and those things haven't happened. People talk about culture. Gosh, Amsterdam was no different to London in 1972. It's been a political change that has enabled it to become a cycling city. But so I always think you shouldn't be afraid. You should get stuck in and accept that they don't know. And as long as you know they don't know and they know they don't know, then you can make a difference. The other thing, I'm going to be slightly contentious here, but so at the moment in the business, things are tough in our business. We just moved factory. Now, what happened was the factory was this amazing thing. We just moved factory. It's all amazing. We worked our socks off. We ran out of money in moving factory, so we haven't got anything left. So we can't make it funky and nice. And it's pretty tough. And actually, people are pretty down. But that's the reality of where we are. People go up and get down. You can't make people happy by telling them they must be happy. You make people happy because they are happy. They are interested, engaged, and you have good times and bad times. And if there's bad times, don't pretend it's not bad. It is bad. And you work together and get it better. But actually, things are exciting, but it's tough at the moment. But that's of our own making. But again, it's quit the bullshit. You know, there's so much fun to be had. This is an example of us having a bit of fun, and I'll touch on it afterwards. So can I ask in this room, how many of you are world athletes? Have any of you competed in the Brompton World Championships? Yes! I knew you looked like an athlete. That is a world athlete in your presence, everybody. We'll just have to give him a round of applause. Yeah, well done. I am actually one too. So that is a laugh. It was started in 2004 with our Spanish distributor because he got hacked off with our potential customers going, yeah, but I mean, it's got funny little wheels. It's not going to go very fast. He's like, oh God, here we go. So maybe I'll race it. So he started racing, had 60 people racing, then 140 people racing, then he got too big for him, so we took it over. Now we have 16 heats around the world. The male and female winners from those heats around the world are flown to London to race in the World Championships. It is on the Mall. There are 750 elite athletes. It is a Le Mans start. You're not allowed to wear lycra and you have to wear a jacket and tie. And it's a bloody good laugh. And you know what? That entire global event pretty much costs us nothing. No cost. It's just having fun. Our customers pay. We didn't rip them off. We don't want to make any money. In fact, we make a small loss, but very small. And we have a bloody good laugh. Our staff have a good laugh. Our customers have a good laugh. They nearly clog up your flipping system. There's so much tweeting and recording and, thingamajigging, and it's all going woo! And that's fine for me because I don't spend too much money on it, and it's bloody good fun. It's good fun for our customers. It raises awareness. It makes you just laugh. And there's not enough time for that. And you can pretend you're laughing, but you're not laughing. And so it's got to be real. And I think if it just feels not real, I mean, it's so corny, but it isn't. And I think that's the question you need to ask yourself when you're doing stuff. Is it corny? Is it a little bit pretendy? Is it made up? Then it probably is, in which case I'd give it a wide berth. So what are we looking at in this little world of ours? And I know this is what people in California, in Google, are spending millions and millions of pounds on. We're spending thousands and thousands of pounds on. But basically, it's interesting. We're becoming urbanites. We're becoming urban. There's net migration to cities all over the world, and it's happening in the east, in the west, in wherever you like to look at it. Then you think, okay, so we're all moving into cities. So what's happening in cities? We're all basically not that happy. So in cities, we stuff in these things called buses and these things called taxis. So we belch out the worst air pollution. So we stuff everybody in the place where the air is the crappiest. So we're all sucking that up for starters. So that makes us not that healthy. Then what we do is, if you're not wandering along Oxford Street, munching your way through the exhaust fumes, you're normally getting out of bed, half asleep, in a sort of slight phase. You potter along and you get your coffee, you're still half asleep, then you potter out the door, and then you pootle along, and then you go to a thing called a tube. This is something you actually pay for, amazingly. Then you cram into this thing, you bounce across other people who don't actually do it, but sort of say fuck off, because they're half asleep as well, and they're bouncing along, and they're feeling a bit ropey. Then you go down this hole in the ground, and you're bouncing along, and all these other people are all looking pretty grumpy, and then you sort of stand in a queue, you're all half asleep, and things whooshes past you, and you shuffle along a bit closer, another one whooshes past, and then eventually someone pushes you in, and if you're not 6'4" like me, you're probably up somebody's armpit, or somebody's splattering on you, they're all looking grumpy, and no one's speaking to each other. Then you jingle along down this funny tube thing under the ground, then you do the same thing up, and then you sit in front of a computer all day. And then you do that every day. Just that's what they do. Thousands and thousands and thousands of them. There they are, in and out every day. And they go mad. We have mental health problems that are going stratospheric. And it's not just UK, it's global. And guess what? We have obesity problems. Obesity is up 60%. Sorry, diabetes is up 60% in the last 10 years. Cost the UK economy about 9 billion. But then the average distance in cities to work is 4 miles. So it's like, hold on, what are we missing here? We have a city with cool architecture, with parks, with canals, with a river, and we're all going down a little hole in the ground, or squished through a tube. And most people are doing about 4 to 5 tube stops. I mean, in many cases, you could walk it, forget cycling. So something has to change. And it's not driven by some, toe-sandaled, hardcore. It's just urban living. And what can society afford? And we need to change how we live in cities. And I'm not pretending a bicycle is the solve of all of our problems. but it is definitely part of it. And we know it's part of it because we look in cities where cycling isn't at 4%, which is where London is as a city, it's at 25%, 35%. All the measures demonstrate the value. So the next 25 years are going to be interesting. So we're trying to innovate. And interestingly, innovation is getting cheaper. When I was at uni, Ford had a CATIA system. Unless you were some massive conglomerate, you couldn't afford the computer. It took up the most of this room. The idea that anyone had a 3D printer when I started only 14 years ago was we had bits of ply and we filed them all down, and then when we made tools, we had to basically make it up and all done on 2D. Now we can design something in 3D, print it out, and we can make it 2.5% bigger because that's a shrink of the metal, or 2.5% for the tool, which is made out of aluminium, then 3.5% for the White Hart malleable iron. So we do 2.5 times 3.5, and it's perfect when it comes out. It's just everything is getting easier. Then you do FEA, so you don't have to do so many prototypes. What that means is innovation is being disrupted. If you weren't massive, you couldn't compete, and that's changing. Whether we're big enough, I don't know, but we're going to give it a go. We spent 10 years on this project. It's a flipping joke, trying to make an electric bike. And we spent 2 years just farting around and just trying to learn. Then we decided we thought we knew what we were doing, and we went to a company in Taiwan who were a motor company. We tried to go with some guys in Wales, and they were just too greedy. Anyway, went with these guys in Taiwan, and we spent nearly 4 years there. We spent 3 years in doing quite a lot of work, and we made some progress, but we hit a dead end. We had a technical problem we just could not solve, and it was to do with the epicyclic gear train. And we just couldn't solve it. And it was beyond them. It was beyond us, and it was like bugger. Because with an electric bike, there are lots of them, as it happens. The market in 10 years has gone from pretty much nothing to 1.2 billion in Germany. So that's quite a big market. The market is expected to be 24 billion globally by 2025, e-bikes. So you can kiss goodbye to a normal bicycle. So basically this is old tech, what I'm showing you here. But that's fine, I'll still sell it to you. But we ended up hitting a brick wall. So then I thought, oh crumbs, we've got it. We need somebody who's a bit more techie, and we need somebody who's closer. So I ran out one of our customers, because that's what we always rely on when we're in trouble, is our customers, a chap called Patrick Head. He ran Williams for 25 years, the F1 fast car people. And I asked him for advice to who to go to. And then he said, well, Will, we have been putting these electric motors in our cars for about 6 years. It's called a KERS system, a kinetic energy recovery system. It's quite a light, efficient dynamo that turns into a motor, and it also has a battery pack. And we've also developed Williams Advanced Engineering, which is like a spin-off vehicle. Maybe we can help you. I was thinking, you're far too expensive. Anyway, it was jolly expensive. We've got a bit of help from the Technology Strategy Board, which is now Innovate UK. And we spent the last 3 years developing an electric drive. And we're quite close to having something pretty cool. And we cracked the problem with the hub gear. And it's a combination of design. So we've got a very clever injection molded design, which enables us to get 4-tooth engagement rather than 3. So we're putting the load over a larger area. And we're using a material which is a pretty weird material. The design of the gears comes from one company in America, for which we have an exclusivity agreement. And the material's only made in the UK. And we put the two together, and we've solved that problem. And it came out of the UAV industry, because that's where they were using it. It's not being used in our electric drive industry. So we're hoping to have something. And again, you start thinking about material science and what's happening with material science, and it's going to be interesting. And actually, I'm rushing along and jumping about, but if you think of an aeroplane, 1916 aeroplane, got it? It's made out of cotton and wood. 2016 aeroplane, just unbelievable killing machine, Mach 2.5 and all sorts of whiz gizmos. Massive change. So then you go 1916 bicycle. 2 wheels, AA frame. 2016 bicycle, plenty of bullshit, lots of marketing, 2 wheels, AA frame. Hardtail, softtail, fat tire, thin tire, but basically it hasn't changed. I mean, it's gone nowhere. But that is about to change, because now suddenly we're putting technology into a bicycle. That means the average sale price in Germany is 2,500 euros. That delivers more revenue for the industry, more opportunity to develop material science. I think bikes are going to change. particularly if you think of them from an urban perspective. Do you rent this building? You do. You rent it. Okay. How many staff in the building? 1,000. Yeah. How many cycle? 200 with bike passes. That's better. That's better. You're backpedaling now. Okay, good. So the problem is cyclists cycling in cities is selling to cyclists. So they're selling to people who cycle. And in the male brigade, that involves wearing funny clothes and shaving your legs. And in some cases, forgetting to get the six-pack before you put the funny clothes on, which makes the whole thing less delightful on the eye. But then if you look at countries where people cycle, they're not cyclists. They're just normal people. They just get on a bike and pedal. They don't have to do weird stuff. So we are trying to make cycling normal, and lots of people, nearly everybody, learnt to ride a bike. And that sense of freedom and simplicity you get with riding a bike is so delightful, it never leaves you. So we created basically a bike dispenser. That's our Brompton Dock. We have 50 of those in 24 cities across the UK. You use a smartphone, you walk up, you type in a code, the door pips open, out comes a Brompton, and off you go. Average hire is 4.5 days. So you don't take it back. You can take it anywhere. You can take it to France. You can take it to the US for a week. It's £2.50 a day. You can drop it back whenever you like. That should be outside your building. And it should have these inside it. So your staff can go wherever they like. It's a no flipping brainer. And it means that somebody who is a cyclist has a bicycle and they're going somewhere. They just say, well, go take one of the bikes. Let's go. Hop on a bike, whiz off, fold it up. No trouble at all. Someone's at the weekend, they're going with their children or they're going on holiday, take 2 bikes, go with the children and have fun. No brainer. Cycling needs a catalyst to get more people cycling. You can't just rely on people. You've got to give them a really little barrier to entry and let them try it. Once you try it, you love it. But you haven't tried it for so long because it suddenly became uncool and you've got to drive a car because then you've got loads of money and you've got to get the chicks and all that stuff. But actually, that's just nuts. And the bike is super cool, but you've just forgotten about it. It's quite innovative. We, in businesses, so you've got 1,000 people here, you've got other people in other office. People talk about businesses as being hundreds of thousands of people. Businesses aren't hundreds of thousands of people. They're just groups of maybe 80 to 100 people. They're like lots of little businesses. You have a culture within a department. You have a culture within a different part of the business. It's not a complete business. And at Brompton, we've had, well, I used to work for ICI and DuPont and these big companies, and I was involved in project management. So we did project management, and we used to sort of do these projects, and we had to have a 3-year payback. So guess what? We wrote this great business plan. We had to have a 3-year payback, which was a 3-year payback, 2.5-year payback. Then we had a little piece of paper that had to go around, and everyone had to sign it. And that's basically the arse covering piece of paper. And as long as enough people have signed it, everyone saw that somebody else has signed it, and then it's all fine because no one's taking responsibility because they've all signed it, so it's fine. And it says less than 3-year payback, so it's all fine. It's all going to be great. But the problem is, if you have enough experience of these types of projects, they never add up because they're based on something called an assumption. That's deep in the guts of a project. And the assumption is basically just a sort of educated guess, and it spins out certain effects. And of course, I loved my projects, and I wasn't going to have somebody else get the money that I wanted for my project. So of course my assumptions may be a little bit on the optimistic side. That's the nature of the beast. So we have a part of our business which is where we do far less research and development, far less endless sort of justification for investment. And we look at the downside. So in your business, rather than always assuming the upside, give yourself more flexibility, less bureaucracy, and say to yourself at the beginning of the year, so in our case, we don't have it at the moment because we're so full of projects we've got to deliver, there is no fuck it fund. But for a long time we did have it. And basically, we had a fund that's basically fuck it. It's the fuck it fund. Started at £5,000, and we had a £5,000 pot. And we decided to just give it a go, try something. And that justification was not the upside. that justification is the downside. So in a project, if everything goes wrong, what are you in for? That is a much more exact amount in terms of reputation, in terms of cost. You can measure that. And if you can measure that and you know you can afford that, then just do it. Don't go through endless analysis and tons of market research. It costs you a fortune. Give it a try and find out. Now, if you try it and it's a complete disaster, you stick a sign up and say, do not go down this alley because it does not work. So you've got something out of it. If you try it and you think, hey, that was pretty cool, maybe there's more to do here, then you do more research and you justify your research and you understand and you go after that business. The business, the electric bike, the e-bike, our first store, were all sod it, bugger it. So, who cares? Just do it. But do it with a controlled downside. And I think if you take a certain amount of funds and write them off at the beginning of the year, write them off. There is no return on investment required. They're written off. But you can play with them and you give them to different departments. It will allow more innovation. Retail, like I said earlier, we've gone into retail, not because we're interested in retailers, because our retailers don't speak to our customers. They speak to blokey, techie, weird people with shops full of people with their jeans round halfway around their bum and talking about the 2-speed, 16-speed Shimano, ding, ding, ding. We don't want that. We just want a nice colour, get on it, works, like it. And so we've created stores. We've now got 11 stores. We started with one store in Kobe in the south of Japan. We've now got them in Amsterdam, Shanghai, Beijing, Milan, all over the shop and growing. And it started by just doing it. We started with 3 stores, just give it a go. Now we've got brand guidelines and all the other stuff. That came later. I'm whittering on. I've been told I've got 2 minutes. I've now got about 45 seconds. In summary, there is, businesses, we are growing. We're still little. We're 32 million. We've grown from, while I've been there, from sort of 24 staff to 240 staff. We've gone through various transitions over that time. We've had to introduce processes and procedures because you can't rely on speaking to people. But my job is to disrupt. My job is to make us, to agitate and to not be too serious and to not, start worrying too much about what might or might not happen and to continue to be different. And, I've been there 14 years. In theory, I should be stale. I'm frustrated we haven't even got started with the amount of stuff we should be doing with this business. And I think that, and remain, my ambition for the business, and I hope similarly for our staff, is not how much dosh I can have. When you meet an 80-year-old, they don't give a stuff how much dosh they've got and all that crap they've accumulated over their life. Most of it's rubbish. What they care about is what they've delivered to society, what their legacy is, what effect they've had on this little planet of ours. And in this business, in every business, that is the opportunity. And if you can deliver on that, then you've delivered something worthwhile. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, I've bought one of these about a year ago and I absolutely adore it, so thank you very much. Second thing is, you, I believe, let your patents lapse.
Yes. Well, we didn't let it lapse because the patent only lasts 21 years.
Okay. You didn't renew them. Could you talk a little bit more about that and the kind of the rationale behind it?
So, in our world, bike world, most people just assemble bikes. Actually, most people don't even assemble them, but those that do make them assemble them. Assembling is easy. The value in a bike, in my opinion, is the frame. That's the clever bit. And the way we make our frame is weird. It's anal. It has a tolerance of about plus or minus 0.2 of a mil versus a normal bike plus or minus 2 mil. We use CMM machines, we braze it, we do weird stuff because it demands it, because it's already a compromise because it folds. So everything else must not be a compromise. There is far more IP in the manufacturing process than there is in the product. So we have a 200 grand auto braze machine, it's got thermographic cameras, it's PLC controlled, it's hydraulic systems designed and made in-house. We've got oodles of weird stuff. So if we got someone else to make it, we'd have to teach them how to make the machines to make the bike. And we'd have to teach them how to maintain the machines and all the proactive stuff. And therefore, that's fine, they could do it. Anyone can do it, it's not that difficult. We'd have to teach them, it would take 3 or 4 years. So if that happened and we went to the most sensible place, which would be Taichung in Taiwan, where most of the good quality bikes in the world are made, someone can work for us for 5 years, understand our process. Then they could work for a competitor and not even move house or take their children out of school. That just means that your knowledge just seeps out of the business to the competition. We are the only bonkers people making bikes in London. So therefore, our knowledge is quite safe unless our staff decide they want to emigrate to Asia. So actually, being manufactured in London wasn't a conscious decision, but it has been an important part in protecting our intellectual property. People think bikes are simple. They are to a point. You've got to remember, someone rides this, you will ride your bike for the next 15 years, every day, potentially. What happens if it breaks? You're next to a bus. That is not a funny outcome. So the implications of getting the quality right and having a product that's robust is really important. So and so you can make something look like this, but personally, I would be wary about jumping on it. It might be fine for the first 6 months, but you're whizzing down a hill and the thing snaps. It's an unfunny outcome.
Nick.
Hi, yeah, I had my first Brompton for about 10 years and I've had my second one for about another 2. When I was replacing it, I seriously considered, I looked at the cost and it's about £1,000. It had lasted me about 10 years. You can get a cheap bike for about £100. So I was looking at, I could get myself a new cheap bike every year. Does that sort of economics worry you, and how can you deal with that?
So just to put into context, the material cost, which is a commodity, of this bike is about 3 times the cost of your £100 bike. Yeah, if you'd bought one. It is so shit, you shouldn't get on it. If you were saying a £400 or £500 bike, that's fair enough. But if it's a £100 bike, it's a flipping death trap because the stuff that they've made it with is rubbish. But, you know, there is absolutely an argument to say, and if we could make something, we're not greedy. We make about 40% gross margin, we make about 10% net profit. As it happens, our net profit at the moment has gone south because we're investing in the future. But that's, you know, we're not all, you know, wandering around in Ferraris, we're riding little bicycles. But I think it's, you know, the labour cost in our bike is currently about 25% is the labour cost out of the total cost of the bike, direct cost. People would think it's much more because you're in London, the labour cost. We reckon we can get that down to about 15%. Now you may be able to get that down from 15 to 4% if you went to Taiwan or China. But then, you know, what's the value proposition between it being 15 down to 4 and the value of protecting it and the value of having our profits to be able to invest in more innovation? So, and there is value. You know, we've got somebody from the Royal College of Art, student in for 6 months. He did mechanical engineering at Imperial, now he's at the Royal College of Art. Awesome. Coming up with ideas. You know, there's real value in being in London. So it is a risk, but ultimately, if we are giving good value, if we're obsessed with giving good value, then that's the proposition. Value, not absolute cost on the day you buy it. It's value. And brand is a reflection, in my opinion, of value. But that takes time. And there may be products that come along and look great, but then, and they might have their moment, but the real test is whether they're still there after 5 years and whether they've really delivered that value.
Do you feel you're getting enough support from the government to continue production in the UK?
I think any business that relies on any government for their well-being needs to have their heads inspected, because you can't rely on the government for anything. The fact is, governments come and go. They, like we were saying earlier, they mean their best. If there are little bits that help us along our way, I'll scoop them up, and they've been great. What we got from the Technology Strategy Board was awesome, because my board were always a bit worried. And the fact that somebody from the government had said it's a good idea and given us 200 grand, like, oh, well, we can't say no to that then, can we? You know, so, and you know, R&D tax credits, thank you very much, we'll have those. They genuinely make a difference. Patent box, that genuinely makes a difference. But if you took everything away, if the business can't stand on its own 2 feet in its own world, then you are in trouble. Personally, I'd feel very uncomfortable with that. So there's far more the government could do. The most important thing the government could do is stop spending tens of billions of pounds on digging more tunnels and putting in infrastructure before they've spent £2 billion making cycle lanes across cities, because that is so much better value, and it would make our cities a better place. But that's coming. It's just taking rather a long time.
So I'd not heard of the rental boxes.
Yeah.
I'm totally going to try that now. But what is preventing a larger rollout?
Cash.
Right. It costs you.
It doesn't, well, it costs somebody else. So we sell the dock and we sell the bikes. So we have to sell it to somebody. We are not funding it, but we sell it to somebody, they put it in place, and then they get bike hire and it costs them nothing. At the moment, the Boris scheme's about 25 grand a bike to put on the streets of London, and then it's costing GLA 12 million a year. And the outer boroughs that are funding it are not getting any bike hire. And you couldn't put that bike hire scheme into Greater London because it would make even bigger losses and it would cost more money. So it's not viable. It's fine for capital wealthy cities, but it's not viable for Leeds, for Sheffield, for other cities. So we've created something, and also if you go back, starts to get quite cool, but this scheme has retrofitability of electric bikes, because everybody else is trying to charge the electric bike in the docking station, and all urban cycling is going to go electric, but that's a big mistake, because then it makes the docking station, you have to put more power in. This is solar powered, you just drop it on the street, half an hour it's live. Theirs, you have to dig up the street, planning permission, lawyers, rip off, and with electric bike it's even worse. But in ours, the electric drive, the power pack's in your luggage. So if you're an electric user, you'd get sent luggage. And then all that would happen is the door would open with the solar power, and then you just click your power on and you'd be in control of your power. So there's all sorts of cool stuff. But I suppose we're not VC backed, we're a privately owned company, and we've only got so much money, and probably we're taking on too much. So it's costing us, at the moment, it's costing us about 30 grand a month, that project. We've invested, probably in the region of about £1 million in that project so far, funding it. And it's so awesome, but it's flipping hard, and also sticking out across the country is quite difficult. Anyone else?
Yeah, I wonder what you think of other companies that are sort of disrupting travel a little bit, in particular Tesla.
Yes.
The electric car people, they seem similar, albeit much newer than you.
He's getting a bit more help from the government than I am. I just think, it's interesting times. I mean, the average age of the people getting a driving license in the US has moved from 17.4 to 19.2 in the last 10 years. So people are not needing to have that driving license. So things are shifting. The question is, can we remain private and have enough revenue to innovate at the speed that we need to retain a viable, competitive product? And that's debatable. The next 3 or 4 years will be interesting. The interesting thing about the car industry is they keep just trying to make more cars. They don't sort of realise they're in the transport industry, even though they pretend they are. They talk about mobility. They keep making cars, and they're big boxes, and they're quite heavy, and they're not that efficient. This thing, our electric bike weighs 11, 12 kilos, and it carries me. A car that's electric weighs 1,000 kilos. I mean, it's flipping nuts. It's inefficient. You're carrying all that weight. So it's going to be interesting. And I don't know the outcome.
But I guess they're interesting because they're cars, but not so much like other ones. And yours are bikes, but they're not so much like other ones.
The thing about Tesla is the barrier to entry for developing an electric engine is far less than an internal combustion engine. So again, the point is the internal combustion engine required massive industry, massive collaboration. Electric engines are pretty easy to make. So that is going to open up that industry quite a bit. But if you look at his accounts, there's been basically the US government have given up on GM and just shifted their enormous great subsidies into Tesla. But it's good. At least he's doing some innovative stuff. I think it's great. And the one I really like is his vacuum rail thing, because that's flipping cool. If you can stick a train down a vacuum, that would be awesome.
And you could probably carry a Brompton on it.
Yeah, of course. And that's there. End-to-end journey.
With that, we'll leave it there. Please join me in a massive round of applause for Will Butler-Adams.